Good morning. Hope you're all awake and alive. I love this story, that's got a lot of passion to it. Threefold message, you might as well say, too. The parable of the lost son, the prodigal son, as he's often called, is a very powerful story. It's a story that should be a wake-up call to all of us. A wake-up call to the fact that we live in a world that's fallen. We live in a world where everybody's troubled and struggling and confused, and people are still lost. We live in a world where religion all over the place is trying to dumb down God's word. It's trying to tell us just live and let live. And if we do that, a lot of people will be lost and miss the gates of heaven. You and I, for the rest of our lives, will never be finished speaking of His word. You'll speak of it by how you live, your example, how people see you. You'll speak of it by that time you give a testimony to that family member who's trying to find the Lord and doesn't know how. It's amazing to me how quietly the world's church has gotten. It seems like we just hope everybody finds their way because we found ours. Or we have to understand something, that people aren't being raised in the church like they used to be. It's not mom and dad at home with the kids going to church and taking their kids and telling them what they should think and believe. It's hit or miss. It's one-parent homes. It's sometimes not even the parents. Somebody else is raising the children. Somebody else is helping out. There are governesses in some of the wealthier families. People are not hearing what they used to hear. Can you remember a time in your life? I do. When we used to go with our parents to church, we'd walk. You'd still hear the church bells out on the streets ringing, calling people to church. It was a time that people today will never understand or know because it's never happened for them. But it made things special. You were already on a sojourn, you might say, a walk, a pilgrimage to church to come in and rediscover God anew one more time, one more service. And hopefully you'll catch the message in the message given by the minister and the things that are sung, the things that are done, the prayer time, in a way that'll stir your heart to want to serve all during the week. But we know that's not so, because if it were, the churches would be full everywhere, wouldn't they? We'd be passionate about what we once believed. I hope we are. This is a come alive message for us as Christians. I'm going to look around and guess that most of you have given your life to Christ. Probably everybody in here. So now the question is, do you want everybody you know to give their life to Christ? Is there somebody in your family right now who doesn't know Him and you're just praying for them constantly, hoping they'll come around, but never say anything to them at a reunion or when you have the chance? Because you don't want them to be offended or upset. Sometimes we get that way, don't we? We're timid if we admit it. But we've got the best message in the world. The message that Jesus saves. You can't get to heaven through anybody else but Him. All these other religions are empty. They were made by men through time because they want a God that would suit their needs and their lifestyle. But what about a God who made mankind, and He's the creator, and we understand that, and He says, here's my will for you, and we look at it in His word all the time, and hopefully we try to live by it. I want to tell you a quick story here. This is a message, I've called it Lost and Found. I like that name for it. Lost and Found is the message today. And I want to tell you about a little boy named Kelly. His formal name was Mitchell Kelly. He had been breaking into soda fountain machines. He'd been hanging out with boys that would turn over tombstones in cemeteries because they thought it was funny. He'd learned to cuss like the rest of the kids in the neighborhood did. And he was doing a few other things that weren't appropriate. And he was going down a path that was just hard to watch, especially if you're his brother. So his brother Mark, which would be me in this case, and he was my brother Kelly, we sat at the dinner table one day. He's 4 years younger than I am. And I got the courage, and I said, Father, please help me to say the right thing so he won't get mad. Because let's face it, family gets mad at family when you try to say the right things. I said, Kelly, I found something at Ohio Valley College when I went to college there to play baseball that I can't let go of for the rest of my life. His name's Jesus Christ. I found Him at midnight. I remember the campus emptied out. I told him the story how the campus emptied out. We took cars down the road, got one of our professors up out of a bed. He went down to the church where he was preaching, and we had a little worship service, and at 12-something in the morning, I was baptized into Jesus Christ, and I told him about it. I said, I have to tell you, I couldn't sleep that night. I was in tears. I was excited. I was happy, but I was crying. I don't know why. And then a girl on campus that same night who had evidently she had a crush on me. I didn't have a crush on her, believe me. But she did me, and she saw that I'd made that decision, and she knew she needed to make that decision. So she and the girls go in the dorm, and they stay a little bit, and they pray. And here we are at 1 o'clock in the morning, getting up again, taking all the cars down the road, calling that professor, and he did not mind getting up again. And there was another girl baptized that morning, and we celebrated with her. And I told my little brother about this, and I said, all I can tell you is it's not like that for everybody. It doesn't happen that way. Maybe there's a lot of people singing and dancing. We were all young, though, at heart. We were energetic, and we were wide awake, so it was easy for us. But I can tell you one thing. I said, if you don't accept Jesus in your life, and you go on living like you've been living, and doing the things you're doing, there's going to be heartache for you and for our mother and father, and you're going to miss out on the greatest opportunity of your life. I said, I wholeheartedly believe Jesus is real. He's the Savior of the world, creator of everything you see, and that he's coming back someday to take all those people that would listen and be faithful and take them home with him. And brother, I don't want you to miss out. About that time, I'm getting a little bit teary-eyed, and he is too. I want to tell you, he gave his life to Christ. The minister baptized him. It took about 2 weeks because he had some studies. He needed to do that. And then 2 weeks later, he was baptized into Jesus Christ by our minister at the Allensburg Church of Christ. He went to Bible college to become a youth minister. And he went to Arizona and served churches there. And I just remember thanking God all those times I think about Kelly. He passed away at a young age. He was 42 years old and he died. He had cancer. But I remember him getting it right before his life ended. And I remember thinking, thank you for giving me the courage to speak to my brother, because family doesn't listen to family too well. That he knows the Lord, and I'll see him again someday, assuming I'm going to behave, which I plan on it. This story today has Pharisees, tax collectors, sinners. The Bible calls them all this. It's funny, they just call you a sinner. Call somebody a sinner today, watch how they look at you. Hey, you sinner, what are you doing today? They'll look at you strangely, won't they? What are you doing calling me names? Well, you should be able to handle it. You are one, but maybe you're one that's forgiven and not one that's not forgiven. Tax collectors, sinners, teachers of the law, and Pharisees were in the audience. A mixed audience, to say the least. As Jesus spoke about lost items and the celebration when they were found again, he talked about the man who left all the sheep to go find the one, about the woman who looked everywhere for a coin, found her lost coin because it's all she had. And then we get to this story next. Jesus keeps talking to the Pharisees and the sinners and the teachers of the law and the tax collectors. These are perfect people to hear these messages about things that are lost, that are found. And then heaven rejoices, because it's the most exciting thing that's going to happen in their lives. And he tells them these stories about the prodigal son too. And today I suggest to you that it is not as much about the lost state as it is about the restoration. Being part of a fallen world, people who make their own choices, we sin. We offend God. We've done things that have hurt him and ourselves and others. And we needed in our life to give back to him our heart, our soul, our life. And so we did. It's not as much about the lostness, though, I think, when Jesus tells these stories, as it is about the restoration, because he wants the Pharisees to know something while they're in this audience, and the tax collectors, and the sinners, and the teachers of the law. No matter where you come from, if you're offending God, or if you're straying or walking away, and if the brothers who are Gentiles have gone away, you Pharisees need to welcome them into the kingdom when they give their life to me, when they learn who I am and accept the way and the truth and the life. You need to open your heart up to them and not treat them like that straying brother who can never, until they become a proselyte at the gate. They want them to be Jewish first. They could never be saved. But that's just not so, is it? Not when Jesus came. So we have repentance, forgiveness, and rejoicing when a person finds their way back home to the care of the Lord of every day and of everything. We should learn a few lessons when we look at today's story that we embrace forever and hold clear to our hearts, I believe. They're just going to be that important. And lesson one is this. The scripture was already read. I won't read it for you again. of the prodigal son. It's in Luke chapter 11, or chapter 14, Luke chapter 15, verse 11 through 32. I'm going to have to read the last few verses, but other than that, that's the story if you want to hold it and look at it as I talk about it. But lesson one, there's 3 lessons I believe I can learn from this, and hopefully you can too, or you already have, and you just need to remember them. That's this. A sinful lifestyle has got 3 facets. I'm talking lifestyle choices, and we have people in our families. You've got loved ones you're hurting for. They've made choices that have caused them to stray and err. Maybe they knew the Lord at one time, but they're not excited for Him anymore as they are for their new decisions, their new lifestyle, the way they want to live. They got tired of a God who told them they can't do this or they can't do that. They have to do this. And so they started choosing their own way. I've got people in my family like that. I've got friends like that. I know people that are still lost today, and I'll never see them again when I leave this earth. Nor will you see the ones you know if something doesn't change. How do we get to where we believe with all our heart again, with all the passion that's in us, that a few words might just make a difference? I just told you about my little brother. I wasn't greatly gifted over anybody else. My heart just simply said I have to say something because we're both growing older and going to go our separate ways someday. He moved to Arizona and I was living in Ohio. I didn't see him but maybe 3 times a year after we both grew up. But that conversation meant everything to me. I hope it meant everything to him. He still talks about it. He actually became a songwriter and started doing cantatas, and his churches let him do them down in the Southwest. I never heard any of them, but I heard about them. But there are 3 facets of a sinful lifestyle. That's this. Here's the 3 things to remember. First, it takes you farther than you want to go. This prodigal son who was going to go far beyond, he'd packed up everything he had. He wasn't coming back. He was making his own choices. I don't want to live here anymore, and I'm anxious to get what belongs to me, what's mine, and I want to go spend it the way I want to spend it, have fun the way I want to have fun, and do what I want to do. You ever heard anybody talk like that before? Maybe somebody in your family is right now. And we've thrown our hands up and said, there's nothing I can do. They've made up their mind. To our shame, if we ever give up. It takes you farther than you want to go. The person who decided to get into the world of drinking and carousing and so forth, maybe got in fights. Somewhere along the way, I'm sure they got tired of it and they wanted it to stop. You ever watch one of those old westerns where the gunfighters in town, and eventually, if you watch the older westerns, the black and white westerns where there's more morals to them, you hear one of the gunfighters talk about how some guy comes up and goes, there's another one wants to take me on. Another one wants to take me on. You've seen those movies where the young guys want to fight the guy who's the legend because they want the name. Henry Fonda in one of these movies, he ends up being the guy who lets the guy beat him because he can't live that way anymore. And this young guy's going to find out it's not such a great life when you go that far, when you make those decisions. I know people who started out just going and having a few drinks on a weekend night, and then a few got to be more than a few. And then everybody started buying rounds, and people started laughing and carousing a little bit, not watching the time, not watching what they were doing. And pretty soon it got to where every weekend they were spending their paycheck on buying rounds for the buddies and themselves, and not going home, and the wife's wondering where they're at, and the bills aren't getting paid, and the children are going without what they need for school needs at school. And it happens too many times, it's heartbreaking. And it's not always the man, sometimes it's the woman that does these things. It just took them too far. Those few times they were just playing with it took them too far. And they didn't want to go that far. And the tears come down, and the hurt and the pain they cause other people. And you don't always remember what you've done to other people. My father used to drink a lot. After the Korean War, he started drinking heavy. When my little brother died, and he was 16 years old, and he'd been ill for 8 years, my dad couldn't handle the fact that he couldn't fix it. He was the Marine Corps veteran from Korea, and he'd seen a lot of frontline fighting, been a tunnel rat, been a sniper. He saw a lot of things he couldn't talk about. I never learned everything about his life in the Marines because he wasn't going to talk about what he'd gone through. But I know he paid for a lot of rounds and a lot of bars, and the day he got remarried, when my mom couldn't take it anymore, and she left, And she finally got a life. She got herself her first job when she was 47 years old. Got her driver's license when she was 42, because he never wanted her to have either. Started living again, and she got to be fun again. And they were living separate lives. And when my dad said he was getting married, he invited me to the wedding, and I came. I decided I'll go to it. A lot of years have gone by. I've got to heal somehow. And he married his barmaid. And the three guys that stood up with him were guys my age, who I went to school with. Because guess what? They went to the same bar he did, and he always paid for the rounds. I was so upset with my father. I'm going to tell you something. He'd gone so far off the deep end in his life. I didn't talk to him unless he called me first for years. Years. Now I want to tell you something else. I was in the ministry, and I still wasn't talking to him. I was telling other people about love and forgive, and I really hadn't ever reconciled with him. Then one day he shows up at my house when he's 65 years old. I'd spoken to him maybe once that year, the year before, if that at all. Never been to his house. He hadn't been to mine much. And I'd moved to Murfreesboro, Illinois by then, so he had to come a long way to see me. And he wanted to let me know something. And I'll tell you what he did. And I'll tell you what he let me know at the end of this. He asked me if we had a state park anywhere nearby. And I said, yeah, we have one right at the edge of town, Lake Murfreesboro. We went out there. He said, let's swing. You're 65 and I don't swing. You going to swing? Let's swing. So we got in a swing set and we swang for a little while. I thought, Dad, what's this all about? Why are we swinging? He said, Lay, what's over here? Let's go take a look. Goes down, reaches down, picks up a couple flat rocks, hands me one, and said, let's skip stones. What? Why are we skipping stones? You're 65. Why are you doing stuff like this now? We never did it when I was a kid. I kept saying that to myself. We never did this when I was a kid. We never swang when I was a kid. Let's do it. So we did, and we counted the skips. Then there was hickory nut trees. Let's go gather hickory nuts. We'll crack them and eat them on the porch when we get home. We did. We went at my house, and we sat in the parsonage back porch by the church, and we're having a visit, and it's actually a very nice one of the best ones I've ever had with him in my life, where he was sober and solid about what he was thinking. And then when it was time to go home, he had about a 5-hour drive home. He said, son, I want to do something else I haven't done in a while. Can I pray with you? I said, what? I should be the one saying, can I pray with you? I should have said that for him. But he told me, he said, I'd like to pray with you. He led a beautiful prayer. We all joined hands. He looked at me, he said, I love you. And you know what? The only other time he ever told me that was when I lost my son to a drowning many, many years before that. He'd never said it before. He never used those words. He was too tough for that. And I wouldn't have hurt him anyway if he had said it probably. He said, I love you. I'm proud of you for what you're doing in serving the Lord. Keep it up. That was in August, I believe. December of that year, he's serving in a Marines group that's collecting money for Toys for Tots, and he's the chairman of the board, and he'd been doing it for several years. And he had a heart attack and died on the table right there while he was serving other people. I got a call that he'd passed away, and I thought, okay. I kind of cried a little bit because I thought, doggone it, Dad. We missed out on a lot, didn't we? The minister ended up being a minister I played basketball against in high school from another town, and I knew him. I knew his face. And he started talking about my dad. He said, I want you all to know that for the last 3 years in this church, Freddie Irwin's been our head greeter. He's been passing out the bulletins. He mows the grass, sees that it gets done, takes me out to eat once in a while, checks on me. And he says prayers for our communion and sometimes to open up our services. He said, I want you all to know, I know that you've had a rough life with your dad, but he made it back. He made it back before he died. So this story of the prodigal son becomes important to me for that reason alone. For my brother Kelly, both of them have died now and gone to be with the Lord. And I'll see him again someday. I've got to wait until that day comes. But they made it back. But the thing of it is, you got to remember, sin takes you farther than you want to go, and it costs you more than you want to pay. That's the second thing. Actually, it's the third thing. I'll give you the second thing. I'm getting excited here. It keeps you longer than you want to stay. That's the second thing it does. It takes you farther than you want to go, keeps you longer than you want to stay. Isn't that the truth when you're living a lifestyle of some type that's not only offensive to God, but to your family and others, and you know down deep it's not right? It keeps you longer than you want to stay. And isn't that always the truth? And then the third thing is it costs you more than you want to pay. We never want to pay the price for our sin. Nobody does. That's why Jesus did it. He paid for everything you could ever do. Every time he took a whipping and he had this crown of thorns pressed into his brow and the spear went into his side at the end there, everything he went through and all those trials, all the slapping and beating and mockery, he had the whole world on his mind, even those that were doing this to him. Can you imagine that? All he could think about was, I want to restore you to me. Even those of you that are doing this, I'm going to take this. You watch. Watch how you do it if you're God. If you want to forgive people, and if you love these people so much, you're not going to hit them back or retaliate. His retaliation would be that maybe someone would be saved. And we know the centurion's cry at this cross, don't we? We wonder about his story all the time. I do. Sure, this man was the Son of God? What did he do with that confession after he made it? I wonder. But it costs you more than you want to pay. Those are three things that a sinful lifestyle has, the three facets to do to you. And I want to say them again so you think about this. You're thinking about your loved one. They're going to know too. They're going to know while it's happening. And while they're making those choices that they've gone farther than they needed to go. They've gone farther than they should have went. They were kept longer in their sin than they wanted to stay. They wanted to get out, but they just couldn't. They couldn't. The one who becomes an alcoholic or in trouble with drugs or maybe sexually active more than they ever thought they would be. They want to turn the pages. They want to go back. They want to say, I wish I'd never crossed that line. Because eventually they get to that point. Everybody does. I would think if you got a soul in you, and you do, and you start thinking about what it's going to cost me if I keep this up. What price am I going to pay? What price is everybody else going to pay for that matter? Let's move on. There's a second lesson today. I won't dwell on them too much. Lesson 2 is this. A sinful lifestyle hurts more than yourself. This is what, I know I'm looking at the choir here. You all know this stuff, but I'm helping you help ourselves remember when you've got that difficult family member, and I bet some of you have got family members right now you're worried about, concerned about, praying for. Maybe God will give you something, or he'll at least have you in your prayer, change your prayer to where you'll say, God, if not me, send somebody their way they'll listen to. Anybody that loves you. Somebody's got to go. Sinful lifestyle hurts more than yourself. You see, God hurts, but he waits for us to return to him. Try imagine this. Jesus is telling these Pharisees and these sinners and these tax collectors and teachers of the law, that's the people in the audience, a pretty important lesson. He's saying, God the Father, that's me, your Messiah to be, goes to the back porch, see the house, see the field out there, looks out for you every day when you stray. Tell them that when you see them. He watches for you every day because you matter. He loves you. He doesn't want to shut the gates of heaven and leave you out. You're included. He wants you to come with him. And this Father in this story, we can make the three analogies. God the Father and his church, Jesus talking to these people, and you and me today. They all fit. They all fit. But we all need to remember, there was a God who never quit looking. He never quit watching for that stray to come home. Every day. If you've got a loved one who's straying, I bet you do that yourself. I hope you pray for them all the time. Don't stop praying. I've seen people after, it took 20 and 40 years sometimes for some people to turn around. But there's a lady who's very active in a church whose husband's a deacon now at a Christian church in Ohio. And they had to pray for him for 30-some years. He finally gave the Lord his life later on in life. Realized it was what he needed to do. Keep it in mind. Sometimes God doesn't answer prayer as fast as we'd like, but he answers. Every prayer gets answered, and I've always heard there's 4 different answers he might give to them. Another sermon for another day. But here we are. This father looks with anticipation. I don't see him today. Maybe tomorrow. And then that one day finally comes when he's looking out the back, out through the fields, and there's this head coming on the horizon. And you've seen those movies where they do that slow motion sometimes. And there's the body. And he looks real close and says, "It's my son. He's coming back. Quick, go kill the fattened calf. Get my gold rings put on. Get a robe. Get sandals. We're going to celebrate. He was lost, now he's found. He's come back. He's come back from the straying of the world. It cost him an awful lot. It took him longer than he wanted to go. Kept him longer than he wanted to stay. Cost him more than he wanted to pay because he spent all his inheritance. But I love him so much, I want him back. I don't want to sit here and scorn him and beat him down and tell him what a stupid fool he was. I love him too much to get into all that, and time's a wasting. I don't have that kind of time with him. I just want to say I love you, and let's celebrate you're back. You're finally back. This is what you and I will do for each person. I'm in the verge of that for a 3rd time in my family. I've got someone in my family right now who's got problems with drinking, got problems with lying, telling the truth. And this person's working on a marriage with their spouse. And this Sunday will be the 2nd Sunday in a row they've gone to church together, and neither one was going. Both of them knew the Lord when they were children. Both of them, the man and the woman. They knew the Lord, and they'd both gotten away for years. He spent very foolishly and had a very good income and doesn't have anything to show for it right now. Got a lot of debt because of his foolishness. But my wife and I have been praying for them for a long time. Yes, it's another family member. But I am so excited, and I'm going to make a point to call when I get home from church today, and they get home and ask them how their service went, what they think of the minister's message. And I'm not going to be interested because you're supposed to be, because I am. I'm that father, so to speak, or that uncle, that aunt, whatever you want to call me, looking out the back to see that one come home. You see, it can happen to you and me too. Those ones that hurt us badly, that we were worried about, those kids that you've got that are grown up now and making their own choices and you don't like their choices, it's not over. They're still alive. They're still on this earth and the Lord hasn't come back yet. We have to have the passion and the faith to believe that if we keep looking out the back door and praying, and putting it to God in His hands, that day will come. But the lifestyle in the meantime will hurt more than yourself. It hurts God when He waits for your return. Our family hurts, but they keep hoping and praying for us. I always said to myself when I was dating, I'd never be a reason for my mother to cry. My other siblings hadn't been too bad. They're pretty good kids overall, but they'd done some things that hurt her. And I said, I won't be one of them. And one time in my life, I was with my girlfriend on her front porch. We were kissing. I'll tell you, I'll just confess right now. I had my baseball uniform on. I didn't smell too good. And I hear this pitter-patter. It's about 12 o'clock midnight. My curfew's 10. There's this lady, and I can see there's this woman walking down the street in the dark, and every street light lit her up. By the time she got to the third one, she was closing up the house, I realized, that's my mom. I'm embarrassed. She's crying. Son, what have you done? My shirt was half unbuttoned. That didn't look good, I guess, to her. And I'm standing on the porch with my girlfriend. And she goes, hi, Joyce. Hi, Debbie. Let's go home, mister. You ever had that happen to you? Boy, was that the end of that for me. The curfew got to be something I'd started to honor a little bit better after that because that was embarrassing. But I reassured her all the way home. I said, Mom, I've done nothing wrong other than I didn't come home on time on curfew. I promise you I've done nothing wrong. And when I saw her crying because she thought I might have, I knew then and there, I am never going to give my mother a reason to cry. And I didn't. She's gone to be with the Lord now, and I know she was pleased. She was a member of our church here in Richmond, came to church every Sunday. worshiped. That's true, though. Our family hurts, but they keep hoping and praying for us, don't they? That's going to happen. We're going to hurt our family. It's not just about us if we make those choices. And your family members probably know they've hurt you. But it also does another thing here. It robs you of life that could have been lived richer and fuller. A lot of people don't realize they're wasting life. They're not getting something wonderful and special. They're wasting it. What God intended can never be anything but great. Heaven's got to be incredible. Practicing to live for heaven now is the way to go because it gets us somewhat in tune with what it'll be like, except we still don't have a clue. We don't know what glorious riches like that look like yet. We just read a little bit about them and hear about them and ponder the idea and the possibility. But sinful lifestyle hurts more than yourself. It hurts God, hurts your family, and it robs you and maybe your family. You ever had to bail family out because of their mistakes? I have. And I finally decided it's time to, and my wife and I both decided it's time to cut that off. We've enabled them, we haven't really helped them. Saying put them in jail next time would be very hard, but I'd have to do it to make sure they learn something as a consequence if they make those mistakes. I pray they don't. Last lesson 3, is this. Sinful lifestyle often has another consequence. It will cause others to sin in response. This is where we have to read a little bit further in the story here. And I want to read about the second son. Starting at verse 25. Here's the rest of the story that we can't miss. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come home, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in, so his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. My son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. Jesus told the Pharisees about the Gentiles straying in their lifestyles. And one by one, as they come back to Jesus, as they come to Jesus for the first time, he's telling them, welcome them. Don't treat them like strayers who've offended, and now they're going to get a party. Don't be jealous. Don't be angry. Don't think, why does this person give their life to Christ 1 year before they die, and I've been a Christian for 60 years, and I should get something better than they do? If there were alleys in heaven, I'd say take one and be happy, if that's where your house is going to be, your mansion. But this brother, this is why we have to be careful what we do, and you have to tell your loved ones this. Your lifestyle may cause someone else to stumble, and it probably will, because we're human beings after all. They'll gossip at least. They'll slander. They'll be angry. They'll not speak to you. They'll make it hard on one another and other people who are listening. The older brother has become sinful, therefore. He is angry and bitter towards his brother and his father. That's what happened to him as a result of the other one. He is resentful and unforgiving of his brother. He is lost. That's the part I hate to say. Because what did the Lord say to us in more than one place in teaching? If you will not forgive others, I will not forgive you. If you're not forgiven, are you saved? If you harbor bitter anger and envy and rage toward a relative or a family member or a loved one all your life, I'd be afraid. I'd be afraid to die, knowing that I hadn't gone and made it right, hadn't learned to forgive everybody and anybody who's hurt you or offended you, anybody who you seem to think got more than they should have. They should have gotten more than they did in judgment and pain and suffering for what they've done. And when you start thinking, gee, I'm so good and they're so bad, that self-righteousness gets you in trouble with God. I say, rejoice for anybody who comes back to the Lord or comes to the Lord. Celebrate. I know when that happens in our church, I always did. That was my favorite time at church services, when somebody knew they needed the Lord and they gave their life to him. And one man came up out of the baptistry raising his arms, and he was in his 80s, late 80s, and he'd just given his life to the Lord for the first time. And he goes, hallelujah. Well, Christian church people weren't used to anybody getting that rambunctious. But everybody looked, and you could see tears, and everybody was people who knew his lifestyle, the bars and all the things he used to do. Everybody clapped and was excited, came down out of their seats, as though we were the Pentecostals that day. And celebrated with him that he'd given his life to Christ after a whole rough life. But this brother is resentful and unforgiving, and he's lost due to his unforgiving spirit. It causes a great waste of blessings meant for our good, doesn't it? My wife's giving me that look, and nobody else is. It must be close to quitting. At least I don't hear your feet fidgeting, at least. But I'll tell you this, as we get ready to close this off, it's never too late to give a little grace and forgiveness to somebody who's straying. Yes, they need to ask for it. Yes, they need to repent. But do like the Father did. When that day comes, if it comes, be ready to celebrate. Be ready to forgive unconditionally. Be ready to let them know they can come home again. Because I tell you what, this isn't our home anyway. And we're going someday to be with the Father. And Jesus has done a lot of things to make our mansions great. I don't know what they look like, but they'll be just fine. They'll be beautiful. And besides that, just think how fun it'll be for everybody else to be excited when they see you and wonder how you got there. We shouldn't assume we've got it all figured out, because we're still living. We got a lot to learn. God is so good. Don't be the one who strays. Be forgiving and loving of the one who did and comes back. And be praying for them until they do. And always believe they will. And God will honor you in your prayers. I will.